It's time to panic on these players for fantasy football. First player that I'm panicking on, it's going to be Mark Andrews. And I was maybe one of the biggest Mark Andrews proponents coming in. I loved his value that he's being drafted on in the pre-draft process. But Mark Andrews has let us down, ladies and gentlemen. 3 fantasy points in week 1, 9 fantasy points in week 2, and put up a big old nothing burger in week 3. And as much as you would say, hey, Caleb, like things should be getting better for Mark Andrews, I'm excited. I think he's going to continue to just get healthier as the season progresses. 2 days ago in John Harbaugh's interview, he left a lot to be desired for fantasy football managers when he said that this tight end room is continuing to be a tight end by committee. Mark Andrews only had a 33% snap share on week 3. So really for me, I'm panicking. And I've seen plenty of people drop Mark Andrews at this point. I think it's hard because you put so much draft capital in him and it's only week 4 that you want to wait it out a little bit longer, but he's absolutely killing you. So I just don't think you can necessarily start him on a week by week basis. And then when we talk about potential trade opportunities, when you look at potential trade opportunities, it's not great either. I mean, when you start to look, like someone traded Mark Andrews for Dalton Kincaid. Okay, if I can get Dalton Kincaid for Mark Andrews, sure. Mark Andrews for Zach Moss. Give me Zach Moss each and every day of the week here for Mark Andrews. We can even scroll down a little bit further and you're going to see like Mark Andrews for Romeo Doubs or Mark Andrews and Zach Charbonnet for Cam Akers and Kyle Pitts. I like these deals for Mark Andrews if you can get it done. Like I said, we're panicking. We're a little bit worried about where Mark Andrews is going to go from here. Moving on to my second player that I'm panicking on. It's going to be Sam LaPorta. And I'm probably not panicking as much on Sam LaPorta that I am on Mark Andrews because we still do know Sam LaPorta. It's the second year in the NFL. He's dealing with a low ankle sprain, but I mean, even the first 2 weeks, 8 fantasy points, 3 fantasy points. Last week gets hurt, only has 5 fantasy points. So you also drafted Sam LaPorta as a top 2 tight end in fantasy football, and he's not returning that value. Now, I'm less worried about Sam LaPorta than I am Mark Andrews. So the panic meter is not as high on Sam LaPorta, but you still have to be a little bit concerned about the overall value on Sam LaPorta heading into the rest of the season because we have seen Jameson Williams continue to really eat into that wide receiver 2 role, and we've seen them really rely heavily on this running attack, and I don't think what we saw last year Sam LaPorta do is a fluke. I think Sam LaPorta was an absolute league winner. The part that he was though last year was he's very dependent on touchdowns, which he hasn't gotten any of them up to this point so far. So Sam LaPorta, we are panicking. We're a little less worried, but if you're someone where you're like, Caleb, I just need to get out on Sam LaPorta, there are some deals to be had in regards to Sam LaPorta. You could take a look like Sam LaPorta, Javonte Williams for Evan Ingram, Kenneth Walker. Probably still me leaning the Kenneth Walker side with him coming back from injury. Sam LaPorta, Javonte Williams for Carson Steele, Tyler Lockett. This is the perfect deal where I would love to actually buy into Sam LaPorta. So maybe this is Sam LaPorta feels like a buy. I know I'm saying we're panicking on him, but I do think you could potentially buy him for that. But if we're looking to sell him, like, I mean, goodness gracious, Sam LaPorta and CeeDee Lamb for Dalton Kincaid and Justin Jefferson, like if I can go into a guy like Dalton Kincaid from Sam LaPorta, I do feel comfortable. Like if I can get into a top 5 tight end, like I much prefer Travis Kelce, Dalton Kincaid, Brock Bowers at this point than I do to Sam LaPorta. And I feel like the Justin Jefferson to CeeDee Lamb, as much as I have Justin Jefferson a few spots higher than CeeDee Lamb rest of the season, they are in the same tier. So Sam LaPorta is another guy. You determine what those trade offers are going to be like for you. Like even the Sam LaPorta, Jawan Jennings for DJ Moore, Jake Ferguson. Ooh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Sam LaPorta traded for Rome Odunze. I do like that Rome Odunze side. So there's deals to be had in regards to Sam LaPorta. You determine what your panic meter is, how you view Sam LaPorta rest of the season. The next guy that I'm panicking on is going to be Tyreek Hill. And the reason I'm panicking on Tyreek Hill is because we have no Tua Tagovailoa. They bring in Tyler Huntley and they still have Tim Boyle, but last week only 7 fantasy points. Week 2 only had 6 fantasy points. So it's going to be pretty hit or miss here for Tyreek Hill in my personal opinion, unless they bring in or really address the quarterback issue. And for the Miami Dolphins, I don't know if they're just like waiting on Tua Tagovailoa to come back. It's hard for me to even know at this point what's happening with Tua. It's the same thing with Christian McCaffrey. I just think Tyreek Hill at this current value is someone that you need to be looking to sell because he still is going to bring you back in some players that are actually going to help your fantasy football team win some games and help you get to the overall playoffs because like Tyreek Hill for J.K. Dobbins and Devontae Adams. Give me the Devontae Adams, J.K. Dobbins side pretty easily there. Tyreek Hill for Brian Thomas and Garrett Wilson. Give me the Garrett Wilson, Brian Thomas side there. Tyreek Hill for Brian Robinson and Zay Flowers. Give me the Brian Robinson and Zay Flowers over Tyreek Hill's side. So I do think Tyreek Hill, the name in of itself, should get you a good enough value, get you a good enough trade to trade him away. Now, I don't, like I said, I hate trading away a guy like Tyreek Hill because if we knew Tua Tagovailoa was going to come back, he was going to be fully healthy, you'd be like, Caleb, you're an idiot. I'm going to hold on to Tyreek. I just don't think I can tell you to do that at this point. The next guy I'm panicking on is going to be Anthony Richardson, and he's gotten pushed down my overall rest of season quarterback rankings down to my QB8, and that sometimes feels even high compared to what he's done. 27 fantasy points in week 1 was great. You're like, hey, only had 9 completions, but they were deep. He had 6 attempts for 56 yards and did have that rushing touchdown. Now, the last 2 weeks, he hasn't had a rushing touchdown. 12 fantasy points, 7 fantasy points, hasn't looked good. The Indianapolis Colts offense hasn't looked good as a whole, so I understand being a little bit concerned about Anthony Richardson. I think if you can trade up or even pivot into like a more realistic option, that's something that I would be looking to do and kind of sell, because we've seen like Jaden Daniels absolutely emerge for fantasy football. And I'm not saying Anthony Richardson has similar level upside. It just has not been honed in. And clearly we can see that Anthony Richardson is not the quarterback that we thought he was going to be. But like Anthony Richardson for Brock Purdy, if you need a more reliable quarterback, that's interesting. Here, look at this deal. We just talked about Tyreek Hill as a guy we're panicking on. Anthony Richardson, someone just threw their 2 guys they're panicking on. Got Jaden Daniels, who I have ahead of Anthony Richardson. You got Chris Godwin, who I have ahead of Tyreek Hill rest of the season. And then you got almost like a free Deontay Johnson. That's huge. That's huge. Shout out to whoever did that deal on the 25th. We got Michael Pittman and Anthony Richardson getting rid of the Colts for Dak Prescott and Javonte. Now, Javonte and Michael Pittman Jr. probably equal each other out, so you're looking at like Dak or Anthony Richardson. That's a juicy one. Anthony Richardson, David Njoku for Geno Smith, Kyle Pitts, Brian Robinson. Oh, you got to lean that Geno Smith, Kyle Pitts, Brian Robinson side there. So I definitely think Anthony Richardson, his value has fallen. So if you're maybe an Anthony Richardson truther, some of these sells or guys that I'm panicking on, you're like, well, this is a great buy opportunity, Caleb. For me, it's not, because we're playing with fire here with some of these guys that we're going into week 4. So we're starting to cement and understand a little bit about where these guys' overall upsides are. And I would say I'm definitely still, like we said, panicking on Anthony Richardson. The next player that I will be panicking on is going to be Tank Dell for the Houston Texans. 8 fantasy points, 2 fantasy points, and last week he had 11 fantasy points. So if you're saying to me, Caleb, he had the best week last week, why are you still panicking? The reason I'm panicking is because if 11 fantasy points is going to be the ceiling for a guy like Tank Dell, it makes me a little bit worried. He had 6 targets for 5 receptions, 62 yards, and I just think that the Nico Collins has not been affected by adding in Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs has 100% impacted and his opinion on Tank Dell. And so if we're panicking on Tank Dell, I think that is a valid statement to be making. And so when we start to look at overall trades to try to get out of Tank Dell, there's some deals out there. There are some deals. Xavier Worthy, James Conner, Tank Dell. If you pair all those guys together, get Malik Neighbors. That's a juicy one. I like some Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors has absolutely been on an absolute tear. Tank Dell for Khalil Shakir. Give me Khalil Shakir over Tank Dell. Travis Etienne, Tank Dell for Nick Chubb, Chris Olave. That's a juicy one. I think if you're banking on Nick Chubb coming back, having some sort of role, probably week 6, week 7, give me the Chris Olave side. We got Tank Dell for Cortland Sutton, Jacoby Myers. That's probably a fair deal. And if you're selling, you're probably like, Caleb, I don't really want to sell for that package. Jalen Hurts, Tank Dell for Debo, Brock Purdy, and Isaiah Pacheco. That's a juicy one. I think I lean the Debo, Brock Purdy side there, even though you are getting Jalen Hurts, who is still a top 5 QB for me rest of the season. Keenan Allen, Devon, and Tank Dell for AJ Brown, Ramondre Stevenson. Like, give me the AJ Brown, Ramondre Stevenson side there for myself. So, like I said, I think there are some trades to be had for Tank Dell. Definitely go see what your league is interested in as you're looking at Tank Dell. I'm definitely starting to panic over here on the Tank Dell train because I was on the train and now I'm starting to get off. We're going to give you guys 2 more guys that I'm panicking on. My next guy is going to be Michael Pittman Jr. As much as we're panicking on Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman Jr. just seems to be the 7 fantasy points. I think Anthony Richardson is legitly killing Michael Pittman Jr. and any hope you had. So my recommendation for Michael Pittman Jr., we don't really need to go into depth too much about what you should sell him for, because if you can get anything at this point, I would, more than like a waiver wire addition, is to go find the Colts fan in your league and go trade him to him. Michael Pittman, Jake Ferguson for Garrett Wilson. If I can do that, 100%. Michael Pittman for Cortland Sutton, give me Cortland Sutton. Michael Pittman for Xavier Worthy, give me Xavier Worthy. So those are some deals for Michael Pittman Jr. that I would be doing if I were you to try to get out on Michael Pittman Jr. And my last and final player that I'm panicking on in this video, like I said, it's not going to go as long as some of my other videos, but I want to make this quick hitting advice for you guys to take on to your weeks. My next guy that I think you need to be panicking on, and we've talked about him in an earlier video this week, it's going to be Zamir White. It was Zamir White's time to shine this last Sunday versus Carolina Panthers. And what did our boy do? He did actually worse than the previous 2 weeks where he had 4 and 6 points. He only had 3 fantasy football points in week 3. And so Zamir White is a guy that we are instantly looking forward to try to trade and or to add to the waiver wire. Now, a Zamir White trade, you're not going to be able to trade him 1-for-1 and get any sort of value. So what I'm telling you to do with Zamir White is you're going to have to attach him to something to get a better piece. Okay, Zamir White for DeAndre Hopkins, Cortland Sutton. If someone's willing to give me that, give me the package. Bucky Irving, Zamir White, Garrett Wilson for Jameson Williams, Devon, JSN. Yeah, give me that JMO, Devon, JSN side there. Rashee Rice, Isaiah Likely, Zamir White, and CJ Stroud for Baker, Jake Ferguson. That's probably a fairly even deal. So I will hold that side. AJ Brown, Zamir White for Mike Evans, J.K. Dobbins. That's a juicy one because you get the huge upgrade from Zamir White to J.K. Dobbins, and then you're kind of buying low off that last week's game for Mike Evans, even though I do have AJ Brown as the best player in the deal. Zamir White and Brian Robinson for Devontae Smith, Travis Etienne. Now that's a huge one. I think someone's really selling high there on Brian Robinson, but if you could do a deal like that, that's absolutely crazy. Zamir White, Jalen Warren for DeAndre Swift. This is one where, as much as I feel like you have Jalen Warren and Zamir White who are kind of both dead assets for DeAndre Swift. So I do like that type of trade for you if you're able to get it done. So if you like fantasy football, if you want me to answer all your start sit questions all season, hit that like and subscribe button. On the way to 4,000 subscribers. Absolutely appreciate all the support you guys have been giving me here lately. Excited to continue helping you. Let me know what questions you have heading into Thursday night's game. We got streams all weekend this weekend, so make sure you tune into those so I can answer your questions as well. Appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.